My name is Kyle Flynn, and I am this year's chair for the Northwest Enterprise Forum. Standing next to me, so that you'd pay attention to me, is Gayle Duncan, who is my vice chair. And she's wonderful. In fact, she's going to do the introduction this evening.
Well, tonight is an exciting program, and before we get started, I'd like to recognize the effort of tonight's team, led by Craig Bearwald and his team members, along with other volunteers such as Mark Levy, our programs chair, Nathan Williams, our chair of logistics, and Muriel Gilbert, who is our marketing chair. And if you would all just stand up for a moment and let us recognize you, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Brier Dudley. He is the technology columnist for the Seattle Times. He will serve as tonight's panel moderator, and he is going to introduce our speakers, so please join me in welcoming him. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm pretty excited to be here. I wish I was sitting in the audience as much as sitting up here, because this is a really exciting topic. You know, I poked around a little bit on it. And it sounds like there will be about 1 trillion of these sensors over the next 10 years, or about 1,000 per person. And these sensors that we're talking about are going to be everywhere. They're going to be, you know, and they're already in your phone, they're in your Wii remote, they're in your TV, they're in your car, they're going to be on bridges, they're all over the place. And it's actually a timely time to talk about this, too, with what's happened in Japan. If you think about the systems there, we can be pretty grateful that NOAA started putting sensors out in the ocean in buoys about 2 years ago, that we're able to, you know, let people know on Hawaii and the coast of California that the tsunamis were coming. So locally, we're going to see some of these sensors appearing probably even in our parking places pretty soon here. If Streetline has success in the Seattle area, like it sounds like they might be doing some pilot projects at the end of the year here. So welcome Zia Yusuf, who spent 10 years at SAP before he moved on to Venture World and Startupville, and took over as chief executive of Streetline last year.
Good evening, everybody. Everybody awake from the dinner? Yes? Excellent. Thanks for the invitation. I appreciate it. And even though I'm, went to that other school in Cambridge, apologies for that, but visited MIT often. Which is a lot of fun. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. As was mentioned, I'm CEO of a company called Streetline. How many of you ever had problem parking? Okay, a few people, almost everybody. So all potential customers for SAP. So Streetline was started about 4.5 years ago by a gentleman named Todd Dykstra. And he was co-founder also of a company called Dust Networks. And the logic there was, and the thinking behind the founders was, how can we instrument cities? How can we instrument cities in interesting ways? And they looked at a whole bunch of different topics. They looked at things like air quality, carbon monoxide readings, traffic, congestion. You know, can you put sensors into fire hydrants? Now, if you look at the topic of parking, this was a study that was done in Los Angeles over a 1-year period, 15 blocks. 3.5, 4 minutes on average looking for parking. If you're in San Francisco or New York, it can take you considerably longer than that time period. That led to 950,000 excess miles driven. 30% of the traffic in a city is estimated to be caused by people looking for parking. That's a huge number. That's a huge number. This is when people are just driving around. You may be 1 block away from your destination. The traffic system tells you it will take you 23 minutes to get from point A to point B. But what you really want to get to is point C is once you've parked, and then you can walk to your destination. The way we set this up is through a ultra-low power mesh network. And what you see down there, one of the cities we're deployed in today is in Los Angeles. This is the Hollywood area. And so that's a real picture, if you will, of our mesh network in the Hollywood area. And I'll show you what those insides of those things look like. So this is 3 layers to that network. There's the sensor itself. That's the extreme left picture. Then for every about 100 sensors, you have a repeater that just simply bounces that signal. And then after the repeater, you've got 1 gateway box. And that gateway box today has an AT&T and Verizon data card. So what the parking ROI has done is allowed us to lay out these mesh networks that hopefully can make cities smarter and ultimately I think we can have cities actually talk to us, which is what's essentially happening. A city is telling us this is where we have space, this is where you don't have space. And hopefully that gives you all kinds of new information. So we're terribly excited about what do you call it, Internet of Things, smart cities. There's a whole bunch of buzzwords on this. But I think this is the time, certainly, for companies that are exploring this space. You're going to get unbelievable new amounts of data that then, if converted properly into the right applications, especially given what's happening on the mobile side and other applications within cars, we will all change the world. Thank you very much for your time, and look forward to the discussion.
Well, I think Streetline is particularly cool because it helps people kind of get their head around the concept of these sensors being everywhere. We got Scott Sedlick here from INRIX, a company in Kirkland that has basically got sensors in vehicles all over the country, which is another, I used to always think INRIX was the great example of how, a great example to use when describing this world of sensors, because suddenly cars are sensors and they're telling everybody in real time what's going on with traffic. We've also got Josh Smith from the University of Washington, who's building some amazing things with sensors, the actual hardware that we're talking about, that maybe not on this biggest scale yet as these guys are, but Josh's stuff could be all over the world and really change your life in the future. And then we've got Stefan Weitz from Microsoft Bing, and I think he'll bring an interesting perspective, because what these sensors are doing is just generating amazing amounts of information, and this information has to be processed and analyzed and then presented so we can all use it and benefit from it, and that's basically what Bing is doing right now. So.
And for the past 6 years, I've been with INRIX, which is focused on traffic information and really aggregating traffic information from over 4 million vehicles that are commercial vehicles, consumer vehicles from Ford and Toyota, and soon Audi, that are act as sensors on the road and allow INRIX to analyze that data and turn that into traffic information.
So I lead the Sensor Systems Research Group at University of Washington. I'm in the computer science and electrical engineering departments. And I've been thinking about the Internet of Things in some form since I was a graduate student at the MIT Media Lab. There's an MIT tie-in. We had a consortium there called Things That Think, which was about, how do you put computation into everyday objects and network connectivity and sensing and things like that. So since then, I've been thinking about that from a number of different angles. More recently, I've been looking at things that look like RFID tags. These are little chips that are powered wirelessly by radio waves, but adding more capabilities to them. So we've been doing all kinds of wirelessly powered things. So one of the things I'm most interested in is, how do you power the Internet of Things? And we can talk more about that, I guess, as the night goes on. Thanks.
Before this great gig in Bing, I was actually working to wire up cities with Wi-Fi mesh across these cities in Portland and in Milwaukee, with this idea that maybe we could use this horribly expensive technology to do exactly what Zia has done with an $8 piece of kit he got from Tandy, which is awesome. I wish we had you earlier. But now I work with Bing, and really our role in this space is, as Brier said, to look at all this data which is coming in. That the estimates are between 5 and 35 billion devices today on the planet broadcasting some kind of data up. And today it goes in many places, some places not at all, but when it does actually get back to a central location, the challenge that we have inside of a search engine and a lot of these big processing centers is how to make sense of this very graphy or very disconnected data. And so the challenge that we have is to say, okay, I've got all this data which doesn't necessarily have a common identifier. We just know certain characteristics about it. How do we actually apply algorithms and machine learning to understand that this piece of data over here, when correlated with this piece of data over here, actually gives us an insight we can use to solve a particular query or solve a particular problem? So that's our interest in this particular topic.
Do you want to go again? Or
No,
shall I
I'm
go?
good.
Right, some of the big companies that are chasing this are starting to call it the Internet of Things. You've got IBM and Cisco and HP, the people that are going to make a lot of this stuff that we just saw on the screen. And Internet of Things is kind of catchy. It's also a little bit confusing, I think. If you could just, in a nutshell, maybe define what the Internet of Things is and explain it from your perspective.
Okay. So I see the Internet of Things as really looking at everyday objects that are connected to people, to other devices, and to various networks, and the intercommunication among those different elements. From my perspective today, INRIX is really focused on the vehicle, and we're at a very early stage of the market development of actually connecting vehicles to the cloud, to the world, in a way that hasn't been done before.
When I think about this term, the Internet of Things, it's sort of a special case of this really big problem of how do you connect the sort of information world with the physical world. And one big part of that is how do you get, how does information come from the physical world into this kind of information space? I think there's another big question that's beyond that, which is then, what do you do? How can you actuate to actually change the physical world? That's another really big, interesting question.
I have one comment on RFID. There was something like 1.6 or 7 billion RFID tags sold last year. And apparently Walmart alone will buy 1 billion RFID tags this year and put it in their jeans and clothing and other kind of materials. That's how quickly these sensors and networks are moving relative to the market opportunity.
And the prices are falling every day.
Right. It's 7 or 8 cents for an RFID sensor.
Right.
That was a bad joke. By the way, powering off TV signals, that's awesome. I put a note there of how awesome that actually is. So I think about it a bit differently. These guys will talk about sensors all along, which is awesome. But I think about the web of objects or the Internet of Things actually as, from a search perspective, which is traditionally in search we have thought about indexing pages. So we have all these pages in an index, and we figure out how they link to each other via the links they actually have on the pages and whatnot. And that's interesting and fine for the web that was prevalent a decade ago.
I had a question basically for all of you, because I want to change gears a little bit on this. It seems to me that the best sensor reader we have is what we carry around all the time, which is our phones. Near-field communications will be in the next generation of phones. RFID tags, I understand, are virtually free and will be ubiquitous. So, a little two-part question. First of all, how soon will that become reality? Won't that make the phone companies the kingmakers? They will be the greatest, richest source of data?
Google, right?
Well,
yeah, you should
obviously,
be afraid of Google.
my theory is that's why Google created Android in the first place, and I don't expect an answer, but I would expect that's why Microsoft got into the phone business as well. Part of it's about the phone, part of it's about the data.
Yeah, you're talking about the implicit detection of where you're at based on a bunch of sensors you don't know are there. That's kind of what you're getting at.
I mean, on the other hand, your phone knows that you're stationary.
Absolutely.
So
That
if
already
you
does
wanted
today.
to share that data, you could have a little app on there that says, I'm stationary at this location, and therefore I'm going to accept free offers or whatever.
Actually, what happens today, Latitude, Google Latitude actually does. It's fine. But it does that today. You can actually sign up to have basically your location constantly broadcast. And we do the same thing Windows Phone 7, which is a great OS, by the way. That they'll actually let you, just kidding. It is good. But they let you, find your phone. It knows where it's at. But I think I forgot. So it's geofencing. So there's an app on the iPhone that actually allows for geofencing. So as you come close to a location. So for example, I forget my dry cleaning all the time because I never really dry clean things. So when I drop it off there, I always forget to pick it up on the way home. So now I've set up a thing on one of my phones that actually, when I approach my dry cleaner in my neighborhood, it actually fires off an alert saying, "Hey, don't forget, you probably have dry cleaning to pick up." And so literally now it wakes from sleep, it starts yelling at me and says stop because it knows I'm right there. The phone company itself has no visibility into that. That's simply a local iOS call into its lat long, polling every so often and firing off an alert to me. So I don't think the phone companies are a problem. I mean, I guess they could be, but I don't think they're really the big ones here.
Well, thanks, you guys. You're great. I think we're there.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian.